Joining us today, my name is Angela Regalado. I am the Global Director of Talent Acquisition with MIPAD, and I'm very happy to have you all join us today for our latest edition of Music Industry in the UN Year of the Creative Economy. So we'll be discussing, again, exploring new revenue and investment models. We have a great panel of, individuals from all over the world that have contributed to this last couple of years and this upcoming year's new projects. So just to tell you a little bit about MIPAD, in the support of the International Decade of People of African Descent, was proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly to be observed from 2015 to 2024, that the most influential people of African descent, identifying high achievers of African descent in both the public and the private sectors from all over the world as we progress within our network and relevance actors throughout the globe. So thank you all for joining us. I am now going to introduce Tope. Tope will be our moderator for today. I actually want to encourage you all to use the chat room in order to interact throughout the session. We will be then addressing those questions towards the end. So please welcome Tope as our moderator today. And Tope.
Great. Thank you so much, Angela. And once again, welcome everybody to this panel session. Just to give everyone a quick overview, this is our third edition, like Angela said, of the different discussions we're having around the Year of the Creative. The first one was the introduction of the year during the Women's History Month. Then we had our last panel back in May to really focus more on the film industry itself. And now we are over to music panel. And Tina joins us again today. She was part of our first edition of the opening of the Year of the Creative panel sessions. And thank you once again, Tina, for joining us. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, AD. I believe Monday has joined as well. We're expecting Sam and Tammy to join us also as we kick off this conversations today. But we are going to, of course, start this panel with kind of like an overview of what the Year of the Creative is, why we're here today. And no one better to help open that up than our own favorite person, being supporter of this panel sessions, all the way from South Africa, Amy Shelver. She will just quickly go over the Year of the Creative with us, and then we jump over to the discussions that we're here today. Over to you, Amy.
Great. Greetings, everyone. And I am very excited to be here and representing, as always, with the MIPAD crew. Hopefully after this, you've got that video queued, which helps us frame the 2021 UN International Year of the Creative Economy. And I'm really excited to actually be speaking about music today, because music is something that has always been very close to my heart. When I was at university, almost 2 decades ago in South Africa, I was head of the Live Music Society. So I understand the industry and I know its pain points and also the amazing parts that it delivers to the world and to people. And so I really invested a little bit of time in trying to understand where the music industry stands right now at this juncture where COVID has basically decimated live performances. And so if you'll bear with me for the next 5 to 6 minutes, I just want to give a lay of the land and why this session is so important. COVID-19 exposed the serious fault lines that exist in the creative industries in general. For the music industries, this was a painful reckoning of what is and isn't working in the industry, at the center of which is the benefits and the pitfalls of digital transformation and streaming. The demand for creative services delivered digitally has never been greater than right now. Last year, UNCTAD published an analysis that found, aside from depending on the internet to do our jobs, go to school, do shopping, and keep informed and connected with others during COVID-19, it also became the main source of entertainment. Who does that entertainment? Us, the creatives, our musicians and our artists. During the height of the pandemic, creatives turned to digital platforms more than ever to offer respite to their fans and followers, but also to regain some of their lost revenue as their paid gigs and performances came to a staggering halt. At the beginning of the first lockdown in 2020, we witnessed a new movement in online performance. Thousands of musicians, from small-time performers to stars like Chris Martin and John Legend, gave intimate home concerts. Big-time performers like Andrew Lloyd Webber struck deals with the likes of Universal to take musicals from stage to screen. And in the early lockdown days, a different West End musical was screened every Friday at 7 p.m. There was solidarity, there was camaraderie. We'll all remember that, I think, from last year. And most of the entertainment part of this was delivered by the world's creatives and performers. But the momentum behind the unity started to wane as reality set in and the dark side of the pandemic revealed itself. Artists reeled as their income-generating gigs, events, tours, and shows were cancelled. Streaming platforms became the saving grace of artists globally, whose revenues come not only from live performances, as we know, but also from royalties for music played in public spaces like bars, restaurants, clubs, and shops, most of which were shuttered across the world in 2 massive lockdowns. But streaming is not unproblematic. For wealthier countries where internet access, data, and electricity are abundant and affordable, streaming is the answer. But for developing countries, who we look after at UNCTAD, it comes at a much higher cost. In the least developed countries of the world, more than half of the people do not have adequate access to power. There is no unlimited streaming for these mostly African audiences. And then the streaming platforms' business models have also been called into question. Some artists have hit out at an archaic streaming model that allows major labels to maximize their revenue, while some musicians struggle to even make a minimum wage. The big streaming platforms have extolled the virtues of streaming, and actually few in the music world will dispute that the platforms saved the music industry during the height of the pandemic. Music streaming in the UK now brings in more than £1 billion of revenue a year. But the fact remains that artists can be paid as little as 13% of the income generated, receiving only this minuscule portion of the cost per stream. We're talking about microcents on an actual cent. This is only offset by the potential of scale in the streaming arena and a global audience. But even this requires investment, and that's why we're here today to speak about how we invest in this, and access that many emerging and unknown artists simply don't have. The collapse of the live industry affected not only artists, but thousands of people who work alongside them, from road crew to sound engineers to security guards to transport and equipment companies, and not to mention all the venues and the staff that they employ. A new report released this week on the impact of the pandemic on the international dance music industry said it saw a 54% decline in value in 2020, now down to less than half of what it was worth at $3.6 billion. A December 2020 report from the Nashville Chamber of Commerce showed how much the coronavirus affected this famous music city's industries. 74% of musicians said that they had experienced unemployment since March 2020 and saw their annual income plunge by $10,000 to below $36,000 a year. Nashville's many music venues lost 72% of their revenue, costing the industry $17 million in lost wages and delivering a $24 million hit to Nashville's GDP, one city. Then there was the fact that in the rolling lockdowns, many artists couldn't even get to a studio to record, to take advantage of the shift to digital. You weren't even allowed to move around. And so it also became obvious that there is a major gap between established musicians and emerging artists that COVID exposed. For more vulnerable artists, COVID-19 has been devastating. A looming third wave, especially in the developing world, in my own home country of South Africa and others, spells disaster for artists already on the breadline. In Kenya last year, the Hiva Fund ran a survey which found that more than half of the creative industry estimated their COVID-19 income losses as severe. Musicians surveyed said that they had turned to digital platforms, but that it was difficult to get attention because of oversaturation in the online market, and that electricity and internet connectivity issues frustrate the streaming process. Kenyan artists turned online into homegrown platforms like Dunda Live and Mdundo, which helped mitigate the pandemic losses through strategies like ringtone downloads. Mdundo said music downloads have been rising steadily on the continent, but profitability for African producers and the platform requires time and scale that is just not there. So this is the situation in 2020 for the music industry, and it continues in 2021, the UN International Year of the Creative Economy for Sustainable Development, as musicians, promoters, and venues fight to get back to normal. The case of the UK live music industry suing the British government last week to release the results of a return to normalcy pilot project is just one example of the ongoing efforts to get the industry back on its feet. How do we stage the comeback for the music industry? And how do we support musicians and the whole industry to embrace digital transformation, explore new revenue and investment models, and be more sustainable and inclusive, and rebuild and recover from COVID-19? This is the focus of our discussion today, as we look to count the cost of the pandemic on the industry and figure out a way forward that's pro-industry and investments in it. So let's do this, guys, and make it a key outcome of the International Year of the Creative Economy.
Thank you so much, Amy, for that opening overview of what we're here for and the entire UN Year of the Creative Economy. And I think the video that you referenced, we should probably play it at this point before we get into the conversation. So, studio, if you would please just play that video, and then we'll kind of kick off the discussion. Thank you.
Tope, you're on mute.
So sorry about that. Thank you. Once again, welcome everyone. Can you hear me? Everyone hear me? Good? All right. Once again, welcome everyone for joining us today to discuss music under the Year of the Creative. First of all, I'd like to begin by introducing our panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to begin with Monday Tuala. Mondaine is the Senior Vice President of Viacom CBS Networks Africa, Editorial and General Manager and SVP BET International. Mondaine Tuala is responsible for driving development and growth of the powerhouse music, youth, and entertainment brands like MTV, MTV Base, MTV Hits, BET Africa, as well as kids and family brands Nickelodeon and Comedy Central across the African continent. In his BET International role, Tuala leads on driving Black culture and diverse voices across the UK, France, and Africa by bringing the audiences, the story, the music, the news, the lifestyle, and talent that needs to be seen and heard. So thank you so much, Mondaine, for joining us today. The next person on my list is Tina Davis. Tina is the VP of A&R for Empire Inc. She sits out of the San Francisco office. Empire is an American distribution company, record label and Empire is a premier, all-encompassing digital media streaming company. Thank you, Tina, for joining us today. Next on my list is Sam Oyemulekwa, is a media and entertainment executive and managing director of Trace TV West Africa. Trace is a global broadcast and digital media company that specializes in Afro-urban music and entertainment. So thank you, Samo, for joining us today. AD Jr. is a well-known Brazilian-born speaker, activist, TV host, and entrepreneur. Currently, he serves as the head of marketing and communication at Trace TV Brazil, the first TV channel and production company that focuses on empowerment, diversity, and Afro-urban content. So thank you, AD, for joining us this morning or afternoon, wherever you are. The next on my list is Kirenga Karigenra, also known as Eric So. He's a Rwandese-born award-nominated DJ, event producer, radio and TV. He is a founder and creative force behind the Afropean music network Afro Groove. Afro Groove is a network connecting creatives to opportunities. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us. And I hope I didn't butcher anybody's name in that brief intro. Okay, I butchered Samo. Sorry, Samo. We'll get it right. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're going to, I don't think Tammy has joined us yet. She's probably running late. We'll see when she joins us. We'll acknowledge her. She's also supposed to join us this morning. Sorry when I reference morning, I'm dialing in from New York. So if you hear me reference morning, please apologies for that. I know people are joining from all over the world. So once again, like we said earlier in the conversation, this panel session, the third of its of the editions that we're doing, is around music and is in support of the Year of the Creative. And we gathered this distinguished stakeholders in the music space to kind of discuss, talk about what they're doing, the amazing work they're doing. Once again, how we can, tap into all these new ideas about opportunities of new revenue models around the music space, just to kind of, COVID, if anything, has taught us that, we need to diversify our revenue streams, right? That the model has to change because I know on the continent, majority of the music business revenue comes from live entertainment. Obviously, that kind of like vanished during COVID, and digital became kind of like what people were focusing on, like Amy said. And those are the discussion points that we want to kind of focus on today. Like, how can we even look beyond that? What are the opportunities that we can start to tap into now? And I know everyone on this panel kind of has a few things to contribute to this conversation. So I am going to start, let's pick Mundane. So Mundane, you are obviously Viacom CBS is a parent company of MTV and BET Networks, the culture creators for music industry. Visuals help consumers kind of like discover new talent, right? Through playing a critical role in promoting artists. So the question I have for you is, what are some of the investments that a company like Viacom CBS is making in the music industry?
Good evening, morning, afternoon, everybody. Great pleasure to be on this panel, and I think it's a very, very important topic that we're discussing today. From a Viacom CBS perspective, of course, entertainment is and storytelling is the heartbeat of what we do. We do this through very key, close, intimate, relationships that we have with obviously the record industry, producers, storytellers in general. We definitely are open for business. Over the last, I think, 16 years, having launched MTV and MTV Base in the market, back in time. I think, we've always tried our best to be in the forefront of where the trends are going, to maximize our platforms, to obviously promote creatives, promote musicians, promote talent. And most importantly, I think from an African perspective, what remains our vision is to use our platform as a bridge, as a pipeline for African talent to gain global success. And I think I think we've done well so far. We continue to invest, obviously, in the space. MTV Base currently, #1 music channel on the continent. And we continue to build and collaborate with talent, like I said, and invest in different programmatic opportunities that we put in place. I mean, we've done from, BT brand, for example, is investing in biopics, which is a great spin-off from a storytelling perspective, particularly in the music space. We're looking at very ambitious projects, looking at from your Brenda Fassies all the way through to your fellas, to be honest. So we're looking at creating a slate of biopics. We did one recently on Lebo Matosa, which was very successful. Very successful. But obviously, we have to do all these things and collaborate with the music industry in terms of, from a music rights perspective, ensuring that, the right clearances are done, ensuring that, because that all fits into the whole ecosystem around royalties and how artists get to also innovate. I think if there's one thing about COVID in our business, and not even in our business, but I think across the industry, is that it's really forced us to think differently. One of the things is we were all used to physical events. You book an artist, and artist comes to your event, they perform, you pay them, their fees, etc. And we had to rejig, because it was still very important for us to make sure our brand is still tangible, and our consumers love music. Young people love music. I think music is important from storytelling perspective. It's a great unifier, and we've seen through COVID over the last 16 months or so, we've seen music being very central to inspiring people to be able to cope with a very stressful situation, and that's a part that we will continue to play. I mean, we've just finished Africa Day, our second installment of Africa Day benefit concert. Last year focusing on COVID, this year focusing on malaria, and we'll continue to make sure that we integrate, arts, culture, music into our day-to-day, into content, turn that around, and hopefully continue to make a much needed impact in creating innovation in the space. Forcing musicians to do things differently. I mean, you saw with the lockdown, there were virtual DJ sessions, there were, the versus concept, in the R&B space. And we've seen huge numbers on the streaming side. We're seeing a lot more, much bigger appetite. And also artists, musicians, and they don't need broadcasters anymore, They have social media, they have, platforms like YouTube. So that all means that we just have to completely flip the script on how things are done, and the way things used to be done is no longer relevant, to be honest. Digital is growing. I think Amy mentioned how the growth in the streaming, but we have to also make sure, whilst we're taking advantage of technology, that we also creating very much a structured revenue streams that will help creatives and artists continue to thrive. And then as a business, we're very much dedicated to that approach. I mean, we've just had Burna Boy now over the weekend. He won his third BET award, and that gives him access to the world. That gives him access to more collaborations, more opportunities, and to broaden and diversify his brand. And that's something we will continue to do and work hard to achieve. In maximizing our platforms to add value to the much bigger, industry.
That's great. Thank you so much for that one, Dane. I definitely will come back to you on some of the things that you mentioned as part of your the answer to the question. So over to you, Tina. So Empire Inc. is a distribution company and record label. Of the estimated $50 billion annual global revenue from the music industry, About half, 47% to be exact, are from recorded music, meaning streamings, download, sync, and live entertainment obviously accounts for the other half. And all the data, like Amy and Mundane has mentioned, shows that during COVID, that sector, which is the streaming sector, actually saw a significant growth, right? While in the absence of live entertainment. So the question for you, Tina, is how does Empire discover new talent, invest into their project, help them shape their digital streaming strategy, and what does an A&R do? I know that's a loaded question, so I wanted to take it in bits and pieces. So thank you so much, Tina.
No, I thank you. Thank you for having me. An A&R stands for Artisan Repertoire. We find talent, we nurture talent, we give them direction on their projects, on their music. We create albums, we connect producers and songwriters, and we do whatever artist development is needed before we hand them over to marketing to take them to the next level and do their performances or what have you. Empire, we've always really been in a digital space. We've always been a forerunner in trying to make sure that we respect where music is going and how digital streaming is taking over or has taken over. The thing about it, we found a lot of artists had already been kind of recording in their home. Some artists record on their iPhone. Some artists record, find ways to do it on their own. So we invested in that. Some artists we allowed and helped to pay for equipment to be able to record in their own space. Just like we're doing a Zoom now, it's easy to get on a call and have a conversation with them and listen to music and go back and forth. We have an artist actually by the name of Jim Jones who created something where you could actually get online and create a song with an engineer that's in a totally different space and make it an amazing record as if you were in the same studio. I will say that in A&R, it's a little weird when you say that everything shut down because a lot of recording artists didn't stop going to the recording studio. And some of the recording studios just did what they needed to do, made sure that they were either they had COVID tests, made sure that they didn't come in with any ailments. So I can't say that everybody did that, but a lot of people did do that. I know you asked me about 5 other questions, so if I missed something, please.
No, I think you're on the right point. I think the one thing also I wanted to touch on is how you actually identify talent and also invest on their project. Like what's that process like? I know also touch on a little bit about your market entry into Africa. I know that's a big deal for you guys as well. If you can talk about those 2 things, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, the thing about it is nowadays talent comes from everywhere. You find talent on YouTube, you find talent on SoundCloud, you find talent a little bit of everywhere. And we use a lot of the information online to get sort of an idea of where they're going. So I feel like the music business was sort of a few steps ahead of where everything was. So when the pandemic happened, when it comes to talent, we can still find talent no matter what. Our space for us in Africa, in the pandemic, we signed maybe 25 artists from Africa. And to be honest, we didn't even get a chance to meet them face to face until a week ago. I just got back from Nigeria less than a week ago, meeting with every single artist. We started at 10 o'clock in the morning and was probably done at like 3 at night, just sitting and going through the process, trying to talk about where they want to go with their music, trying to find out how we can help them. The biggest thing for us is being able to show and teach them that you don't have to sign with these, no disrespect to anybody who's a part of a major label, but you don't have to sign with all of these major labels. You can sign with a company, an independent hybrid company, and still be able to have generational wealth. So the thing is, for us, is being able to come on the continent and in all aspects, not just Nigeria. We flew in people, artists from Ghana, from South Africa, from a little bit of everywhere. But our biggest thing is to be able to showcase the talent, show them that there's another way, not that it's a wrong way to go to a major. It's just another process, another opportunity for you to be able to own your own masters, own destiny, and continue to thrive in this space, and teach them about the digital space, and teach them about the streaming, the possibility of streaming without having to worry about not getting paid from it.
Great. Thank you so much, Tina, for that. Next on my list is Sam. Sam, you have been very instrumental in shaping the Trace brand in West Africa and very involved in live entertainment aspect of the music industry. So the question for you are, what are your thoughts about the overall growth of the music industry on the continent, on the African continent, and what do you see as untapped opportunities?
Hi, Tokwe. Hi, all. Thank you for having me as well. And, I love that question because I talk about it constantly. For me, on that singular question about what I think about the growth of the music industry in Africa, I think it's incredible because 30, 40 years ago, when I was younger, we only had the ability to dream about being a doctor, a lawyer, and that's only if you came from a middle class or affluent, semi-affluent family. And now my nephews in the village, can dream about being a superstar. And so it's just changed our whole thought process, our whole belief of what we can do and can be on the continent. So to me, that's an amazing thing. The second part of your question, I already can't remember. If you want to repeat it.
Yes. So what do you see as untapped opportunities on the continent in terms of revenue models?
Yeah, no. Thank you. I think I might have been able to pull it back out of the sky on that one. But as few live events that we're doing now, I think that there is a huge opportunity in live. Hopefully, as we continue to recover from the pandemic, and that's in the sense that take Lagos, where Tina just came from, and I'm sure most of our guests have been, if not are. We have 5-10 major venues where there are big shows going on, but we're missing that. Every week there could be 5,000 small live events around the city, and that's partly because the artists think that I've got to be only on that major stage. We don't have that live culture here, so that's one, and that's also a great way to discover and new artists, and also for artists to hone their craft of entertaining. So I think that's one aspect, and then flipping all the way out to the opposite end of it on the digital, as Tina just broke down, giving artists not only the access, the education, and the understanding of what the digital landscape has to offer, from streaming to social to whatever, and that there's actually a monetization behind that that some actually may not even know about sometimes. So the understanding of that landscape, I think, as we bring in more and more wonderful talent, more and more wonderful creativity, that gets rewarded monetarily as well, I think. So short answer, hope that made sense.
Yep. Thank you so much for that. I think you keyed on a couple of things that I'll probably have follow-ups for you later on in our conversation, but I wanted to quickly shift focus. So we've been to South Africa, we've been to the US, we've been to Lagos. Now we're going to flip over to Brazil. Brazil is quite an interesting market. Is the second largest diaspora Black community in the world. If many people don't know, but it's a very significant part of the Afro diaspora community. So AD is joining us from Brazil. So AD, can you just give us a general kind of landscape of the music industry in Brazil? What do you see as some of the advances that has been made and some of the areas of opportunity in your part of town?
Hey, hello everybody. I'm AD Jr. from Brazil, but in Germany now, but I'm from Brazil. Anyways, it's a pleasure to be here. First of all, it's very important to remind people that Brazil is a very different country when we talk about music industry, because first, Brazilians, they consume basically Brazilian music. 86% of what they consume is Brazilian and live music. So it's a very musical country. We have a lot of different kinds of genres in Brazil. Like we have sertanejo, which is like the Brazilian country music that has been always popping up as the biggest music in the last couple of years. So sertanejo, which is predominantly white in Brazil. So the point is, when we launched Trace 2 years ago, we were bringing something new to Brazil because we were giving people the platform to speak with the music from the favelas, the rap, the hip hop, the funk, the Brazilian funk. So it was still a country that, in a way, you would have a lot of people being portrayed as Brazilians for everyone. The Brazilian music, this bossa nova that you guys pretty much have heard, and people mostly don't understand that bossa nova was appropriation, cultural appropriation from the black music, and the whites, they transform it into something chic to sell. So it's pretty much like the black music industry in Brazil was a little bit of put by side, so like a side of the whole thing. But now in the last couple of years, because of the internet, the YouTube, a lot of people had the opportunity to showcase that music. What you see now with Conzilla and also other major houses that are bringing more and more of these new talents that are being curated in the favelas and also in the peripheral areas of the city. So the opportunities, the question is, the opportunities that we have in Brazil are amazing because we have more than 120 million Black and Afro descendants in Brazil, and they really are keen to consume new things. So we started a new show called Juba in Brazil, talking about what is the biggest hit in Africa. It is becoming a big thing because everybody's like, oh, I didn't know that they were doing this in Cote d'Ivoire or in Congo or in other places. So Brazil is the country that, mostly because of the language, most people didn't have the access to understand what was going on there. We are the only country that speaks Brazilian Portuguese in the world, which is different from the other Portuguese. So people don't understand us. So it's pretty much a curse for us. People don't understand what we're doing and we're saying, and they misunderstand what Brazil actually is. So the opportunity here that I believe is to start a new conversation with the Brazilians, with the music, the musicians in Brazil, with everything that is going on, with the COVID, different from many countries. COVID in Brazil has increased the volume of musicians in Brazil being on stage because people are creating more and more things. And we have this thing with live in Brazil. I don't know if it happened in other countries, but in Brazil, we had those lives that are sponsored by companies such as beer companies and TV companies and stuff like that. So a lot of people got money, but mostly the Black singers and also the singers that come from the peripheral areas, they have been struggling a lot. And Brazil has a lot of opportunities. We can talk about this later, but it was just a brief introduction about Brazil. Anyway, hope you guys understood.
Thank you so much for that, AD. I think you mentioned a few things that kind of struck a nerve, and as part of my research, because you were one person that I really wanted to key on a little bit, because your Brazil is very strategic in. You mentioned 120 million Black Afro descendants. That's a huge base. And when you talk about streaming, I went online and looked at all of the top Brazilian artists. They're doing streaming numbers higher than American artists.
Yes.
That I didn't know that until I was doing this research. I'm like, no, that cannot be. Did I see that right? I had to kind of look at some of them. So you guys are, I think the language barrier is what's really not giving you more of an opportunity. You mentioned that as well in terms of, it could be a curse. I don't think your language is a curse, but I get where you're going with that, because imagine having opportunity to a bigger market besides just Brazil. You can double your revenue. So I think that's something that we could definitely, would love to explore in terms of partnerships, collaborations, between the African artists, American artists, and also Brazil. I mean, I know some artists already are trying to do that from the American side, but there also has to be an appetite for African artists to also potentially collaborate as well. I mean,
Just talk to us. Just talk to us. We are here to talk.
Yeah.
So when I talk to us,
absolutely. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. Really, I think that's something we'll love to explore. Great. Thank you so much, AD. I'll come back to you. And the next person on my list is Eric. Eric Soul is a pioneer based in Rwanda. So, Eric, can you give us a landscape of the music industry in Rwanda, East Africa? I know you are also creative as well, obviously, an artist and all. So, what are the advances that have been made in some of the areas in Rwanda?
Hello, and thank you, Toby, for this wonderful introduction. Thank you for all the panel, for all the contribution and the insights. Rwanda is a small little country. Big people, but small country. You know, we have basically 12 million of population, which makes it a very small market. When the big players try to observe what's going on in Rwanda, they look at Rwanda like a very, very small market. But inside of Rwanda, which is part of the East African community, so we always, we also have Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, Burundi to some extent. It's a significant market. There's no cohesion in terms of the music industry, and every country move at their own rhythm and have different level of development. If I need to talk about the case of Rwanda, which is the smallest of the East African community country, proportionally, if you look at what's going on in Rwanda on the Rwandan music landscape, it's the whole building and infrastructure ecosystem of the music industry is something relatively new because of the tragic political and historical past of Rwanda. But you need to understand that Rwanda has rebuilt itself for the last 27 years, and before that it was practically inexistent in terms of their presence on the African music market. If you have to compare to what's going on in Senegal from the late 60s, late 70s, what was going on in South Africa with from the same period, for the post-colonial period, every African country had a very solid foundation for a musical aesthetic, a musical identity. And Rwanda was a bit different at that time because when you look into the past, we have a gap of 30 years of nothing quite going on. It was Kinyarwanda is a language that's not spoken a lot in the rest of the country. We didn't invent a musical template, a sonic sound that was recognizable anywhere else in Africa. I can ask the question to the panel. If I need to ask you now, name me 3 or 5 Rwandan artists. Raise your hand if you know any name coming from Rwanda. So you can see, I can see very silent and very observing. But Africa is looked into. But it means that, in Rwanda, we still have our artists, and, they're striving, they're creating music for the last 10, 15 years. The music industry has developed very rapidly at the same kind of pace as the rest of the socioeconomic development of the country that is documented all over the world. But in terms of music, we can say that Rwanda is still at a very embryonic stage. Some top tier artists are managing to put their name onto the map and creating opportunities. Pre-COVID, of course, the same template as the rest of Africa, working with corporate, working with telecom, working with brewery in the private sector to be able to sponsor themselves, to sponsor the live shows. They're able to record into makeshift type of studios, semi-professional, not at the level of Nigeria or South Africa in terms of the quality of the studio, but they are able to create sound at home. The level entry for producers is the same as the rest of the world. People start creating from home, from the computer, from cracked software. So they are, we have artists who are highly recognized as a commercial force for brands. They can drive the market. They can drive the market. They can push brands, and telecom, brewery, airlines, even government institutions are using the service and the market and the reach of those artists to be able to communicate to the population. But the sound is not international. The sound is not competing internationally. We had the chance to have Mr. Easy, who was here like for a couple of weeks, couple of weeks like last month, and we had a discussion. We did a little podcast, and we discussed about the music industry, and it was interesting because he said, I'm coming to Rwanda because it's a very good environment for creating business, in terms of technology, in terms of finance. Rwanda is very high, is very present in the mind of investors. So he came here for business, but then when he was listening to the music, it was like, all the music that I'm listening on the radio sounds like Nigeria. So in terms of like finding like a Rwandan typical sound that can be recognized as being Rwandan, we haven't reached that stage yet. But the commonality, what was going on in Rwanda and the rest of East Africa, is that there's a wide range of sonic aesthetic that is very interesting and very new. What is lacking maybe is the conversation between intra-African conversation with what's going on in the South, what's going on in West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana. There's a lack of conversation. It seems like East Africa is a bit fragmented from the rest of what's going on in Africa. Even though there's like a few label like for 4,000 Rockstar, for example, or artists like Shoma Josie, who are exploring collaboration with South Africa, with East Africa, Sauti Soul and Shoma Josie have been doing some collaboration. Some artists, just go into try to find like different sound and collaborate with like artists from South Africa or from West Africa. But it hasn't taken a big momentum. What is interesting, what I'm observing from my point of view, if you look into my background, I'm a DJ. I used to DJ in the UK and in the mid-90s, and we've been onto the realization that African music will be the next frontier. As a DJ, working to the club, you can see the musical trend coming before they become mainstream. So from a privileged place like London, which was the head of club culture, we could already see an interest for the space that global sound was taking on the dance floor, which was dominated by black music from the US and pop music. And also London was really known for its underground movement, like all the drum and bass, the breakbeat, the two-step garage, UK garage, all those sounds that has defined the new aesthetic that pop music is going to take, like will follow up 5-10 years later. We could see that from the mid-90s, the whole underground movement, those illegal parties, the pirate radio. Music was more perceived like it's not like the format of music was not like pop music. It was an experience. You don't recognize songs. Those are like track produced by electronic producer, basically creating that type of sound that create that people have to experience through big raves. That you have a lineup of event for 5,000 people, 10,000 people, and the lineup is exclusively by DJs, pushing new underground sound. And somehow in East Africa, this is what I'm observing. I'm observing an experimentation, an underground, futuristic hybrid of sounds that drawn from different type of cultural expression, different type of time signatures. It's not like Afrobeat or Amapiano or the house music. It's very hybrid. There's different type of drum signature, rhythm signature. It's very interesting. So the step to go into the pop music realm, the Afro pop, the Afrobeat, the kind of like uniform, conform sound that that people identify with African music. So there's all those new opportunities. So
60 seconds.
If you want to look into opportunities, what I would say is that what we need to look into is into the professionalization and education of the music makers to be able to produce a sound that is like more competitive and to be able to package it, to market it, because the sound that's coming from East Africa is going to revolutionize again the sounds of Africa. There's like very interesting sounds going to come through, and the economic opportunity will be into synchronization, finding new sound to represent Africa that can go into film, into advertising, and create a new soundtrack from Africa that's gonna enlarge and enhance the palette of what we have in Africa.
Thank you so much, Eric, for that breakdown of the landscape in East Africa. That was very, very insightful and helpful. At this junction, I want to just quickly, because I think the common theme that I've heard so far, at least in the last two speakers, is around partnership and collaboration. And I think that's essentially where we also wanted to land this ship at some point. And it was a good segue into kind of like, bringing to the table some of the things that MIPAD is working on around collaboration and partnerships. And this project we've themed, where in the world is African music? Mm-hmm. Obviously, African music has birthed so many genres of music all over the world. Even the ones we know, hip hop and R&B, country music, from the ones we have no idea, from the Black Iranians, the Black Koreans, the Black Indians. There are some ongoing projects around identifying those voices, and hopefully we'll be collaborating with networks like Viacom and such, who can help distribute some of this work that we have in the pipeline. So if the studio can show that graphic, that video that we have up, that'll be helpful so people can kind of get like illustration of what this partnership looks like from our vantage point, from MIPAD's vantage point. Studio, whenever you're ready. Okay, we'll keep it moving. We'll come back to that later on. Probably technical difficulties. So while we're having this discussion, if anyone has questions, put it on the chat room. We're going to come back to Q&A sessions. I'm going to go around the room one more time, then we'll take questions from the audience. I want to come back to Monday. So you mentioned something, I took notes earlier in your opening, where you mentioned things specifically about the BET Awards and Burna Boy receiving the International Artist of the Year. I think I was fortunate to be in LA this weekend. I attended the awards, and some of the things that that I see as opportunities is around more representation from the continent in terms of what BET is about. Because I always like to attend BET for one simple fact: it's the largest gathering of the most successful Black people in the world. Think about that for 1 second. Like, just the most successful, because when you think about it, and Camilla, I always have this conversation, the one industry where Black people have succeeded exceptionally well is sports and entertainment, right? I mean, we can all agree on that. And LA is a gathering of creatives. So how can we, the question for you, Mondane, is how can we get more representation, not just from the continent as Africans, but even from Brazil? I mean, you heard it, 120 million Afro-Brazilians, and they do equally streaming or better numbers than most of the other countries when it comes to digital streaming. How can we incorporate or include more non-African American Blacks in that weekend to create a holistic global experience, global Black experience?
No, absolutely. I think in the work that we do and my BT International hat, that is the vision. The vision is to continue to expand, expand the BT portfolio across as many markets as possible. We about to probably launch very soon. In Canada, we launched BT in Korea. We just recently, a couple of months ago, launched in Brazil through our Pluto platform. In fact, this year we have, for the first time, we actually had we opened up our nominations and our nominations for the Brazil market, and that's something we'll continue to do, because it's about the culture. I think at the heartbeat of what we all do, the heartbeat of that in terms of what we all strive to achieve is to really make sure that we can celebrate and elevate culture. And African culture is global. Of course, most of us who live in the motherland, we believe we come from the cradle of humankind. But I think it's also the power of music, the power of music to unify, to bring people together. We see this all the time. Music transcends borders. Music elevates, and I think that's a big part of what we are trying to do from a both MTV and BT perspective. I mean, at the on an annual basis, we showcase we showcase African music, even as far as Europe, with the EMAs, we try our best. The last 2 years we've had the Hip Hop Awards, which now officially have an Africa category. If you remember, a couple of years ago, an artist wouldn't even walk the BT stage to get recognized. An African artist wouldn't. And that was an issue for us. We've obviously had to lobby and do a lot of education. There's still a lot of work and education that is needed to really teach the world about the culture, to really use the culture also to mobilize a very specific narrative that can support Africans and Black people around the world. And we can do this through we can do this through music, but also using different genres. I think Eric spoke earlier about collaborations. If you look at the number of collaborations we've seen with her, P. Diddy with Burna, etc. I mean, it's a beautiful story to tell, and the model is there. I just want to encourage everyone. We are open for business. Let's knock on each other's doors and have these conversations, and then implement them, and make them more tangible, and let's make this business and especially the African music industry, let's make it a priority.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. Tina, I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Monday mentioned, and also Eric, in terms of how to balance streaming numbers. Obviously, most labels or hybrid labels like Empire usually try to some extent focus on streaming numbers, right, before you pick up artists, right? I mean, you can tell me otherwise. But the question for you is, how do you balance an artist with potential streaming numbers who's more on the popular side to someone who may be traditional, like Eric mentioned, who may not necessarily go down the path of trying to do Afro beats, but wanted to do more indigenous? Because what I've seen is that most artists they want to do what's popular and what is the fastest track to success, right? Versus doing what they really believe in. So how do you balance those two? Or maybe balance going to like a country like Rwanda, who has a population of 10, 15, 20 million, versus a country like Nigeria with 200 million, right? Obviously, everybody wants to go to Nigeria. That's where the numbers are. But do you see opportunities in those smaller countries where you can also identify talent?
I'll answer that. Well, I mean, the thing about it is, for Empire, I can only speak for Empire. We just opened Africa, Empire Rwanda, and we plan to do exactly that. We want to be able to find talent that maybe isn't streaming everywhere and introduce them to America, to different genre, different types of consumers, and show that the music, even if it's not streaming with the artist in Nigeria streaming, or if it's not streaming with the artist in Africa and in America is streaming, it's still great music. It's still touching a culture. It still has culture in it. And we want to continue to elevate that. One thing that Monday mentioned about having artists work together, like her and Wiz and what have you, we want to do that on the continent as well. We want to do that here. I think the pandemic actually kind of prevented us from having more of being able to do it a little sooner. But we want to definitely make sure that we are able to do that. There's things that we feel is important in Africa that will help to kind of combine that and help to allow people to learn about other music in other places. And like, for instance, here we have sort of like, DJ coalitions. The DJ coalitions here are all over America. It's a DJ in different states that maybe are all about this one coalition. They play different music from different areas for each other, and it allowed everybody to be open to different types of music that's not just the typical rap music that comes from the East Coast or the rap sound that comes from the South. So I think that's something. It's a growth, and obviously it's time for it to start growing on the continent. But we feel that by being there and using our artists to work with each other, having Kitty and Fireboy work together, having artists that are in Ghana work with some of the artists that are in Nigeria, or for that matter in America, we will be able to help to bridge that gap. And just to mention, it's not just about streaming, because if you just look at the streaming, then you'll miss some of the best talent that's out, So we use our gut. We don't always look at the number. To me, streaming numbers, digital streaming, digital information, and analytics and research is really just to get an idea of where they are in their journey.
That's great. That's great. I'm glad that last part that you snuck in, you really cleared everything for me in terms of how you think about identifying talent. I mean, similar questions for you, Sam, as well, is how do you, from your vantage point, decide what goes on your network in terms of the culture, the music and all? Like, is it, obviously you tend to tilt more towards the more established artists to get viewership and eyeballs. And I'm thinking from my point of view, how I will operate a TV network. Like, you go with the known names so people can attracted to the network. But how do you, for more on the upcoming artists, how do you identify or select what goes on TV? You're muted.
Yeah, no doubt, no talk. I wasn't rejecting what you're saying. Yes, definitely, we showcase, what our viewers want to see, and that's ultimately how we make the decisions, and how we actually go about doing that is like Tina was saying. Sorry, Tina, I keep referring to you. But we check out the streaming numbers, we check out the YouTube views on videos. But we also go with our gut. We listen to the streets. We find out what's happening. People much better suited to know what's hot and what's not are out at the clubs and at the listening sessions and hanging out with the artists. And we're listening to them. We're listening to what kind of all indicators to try and get the best view. Especially, as you said, for those up and coming artists, it's a struggle out there, and there's not that many slots available for the number of artists that are out there. I mean, Monday also mentioned, that broadcast in many ways we've been eclipsed in a sense, right? We're more part of the promotion, more part of the consuming spectrum than 10, 15 years ago where we kind of controlled it, so to speak, right? And for us, that's, playing that part means that gives us a little bit more flexibility to showcase stuff that we may love or we may feel is hot and maybe hasn't charted or hasn't gotten an ear, so to speak. So similar to many of my colleagues here on the panel, we want to be a part of the industry, or we are part of the industry, and we want to find those great talents and help them move forward and help them access wider audiences, and at the same time be that conduit, right? So
yeah, I think you're just like Mundane and the BT networks and your trades. I think for most part, because of the limited access to data on the continent, you become the most vital promotional platform, in terms of viewership. Most people have I shouldn't say most people, but a significant number of people have like Dish Network and no, not Dish Network.
Not Dish. ESTV.
But ESTV, I know.
I think it goes a bit further than that because yes, there is, the data is expensive. The devices, sure. Obviously, the people with smartphones. I think the numbers are, well over the 200 or 300 million on the continent now. But we also, channels like ours and other platforms are a bit of a curation, right? Because there's so much out there, because literally you could watch a different video from a new artist literally every minute, right? Somebody unknown. Where do you go to find out what's cool, right? So we're turning more into the curators than the holders of the of the mantle, so to speak.
Got it. Amy, I want to bring you back into this conversation. I want to hear from you what you are hearing from our panelists here and what you see as potential opportunity in collaborating on the Year of the Creative. If you're still there, Amy, I think your video is off. Are you muted? Okay, maybe she stepped out. All right, so I'll jump right quickly to AD. Come back to Amy. AD. So for you, I know you've heard and listened to this discussion and what some of the opportunities that are there. What do you see as next steps in terms of trying to engage Brazil, the diaspora market, specifically Brazil, of course, with the counterparts on the continent? How do you see that kind of playing out from your vantage point?
For us, it's very interesting because Brazilians are very keen to understand what's going on in Africa, but they don't have okay, we're very influenced by the United States and what they do. So because the two countries that had big slave trade and they profited from that, so we pretty much have the same layout. So, and when you talk about the African continent, people, they tend to say, well, I understand Angola, Mozambique, because they speak Portuguese like us. But just to give an example, with Jerusalema, everybody knows what this music is. So biggest music in 2020 in Brazil, silent. So people because it's a country that still needs to be more connected with not only with the roots of 120 million Brazilians, but also with the rest of the world. As I said, the numbers show that Brazilians, they listen basically to Brazilian music, 86%. So I think what we should do more is to have... I like this thing of the most influent Black people Afro descent in the world. So what is this influence of us for? Mostly for us to get connected and to talk to each other about the struggles and the possibilities that we can have. So what I think that we should do more is people listen to Brazilians and Brazilians listen to other people, but please don't come to talk to us Brazilians with this idea of, oh, let's do a samba and the carnival and Bahia and stuff. No, just listen to what we are trying to say about the struggles that these people are living. And that's why they mostly cannot showcase what they are producing. There is a systemic racism happening there that does not allow us to go abroad and do other things and showcase to other things. So I see a lot of Black foreigners coming to Brazil. They see everything, oh, beautiful, great, and get out. It's like, no, just come talk to us, listen to what we're saying, and listen that there's something going on in this country. So for me, the first step for us to start doing something very bigger than only just music, but also the connection through the music in order to change the world we want to live in, is to have the key people talking to each other and looking for spaces where we can project a better way, even to connect with Rwanda. And I would love to go to Rwanda and to get connected with Rwanda, with the story of Rwanda and everything. That this is something that we can do. We have a TV channel in Brazil. BET is the newest kid on the block. but Trace has been there since 2019. And it's amazing that we are able to talk to everybody. I have friends that are working on BET. So you see, there's not a problem for us to have it. The more that we can share with each other about what we're doing, of course, it's good for our people. So it's not like that we're like, oh, I cannot work with Empire or I cannot work with Mr. Karenga. We are one people. One of the abilities that white people had, I'm going to conclude. I'm so sorry to be so long. One of the biggest ideas that we forgot to understand, that the achievements of the white people in the world is that they hate each other. They did 3 or 4 wars, but they agree that they need to collaborate with each other in order to achieve whatever they want to do. Okay, they killed each other 100 years ago, and they killed each other again in the Second World War. But in the time to collaborate with each other in order to achieve things, they really understand, okay, I don't speak Russian, but in the Second World War, Americans and Russians, they got together in order to find out a way how to annihilate the Nazi. So we are not doing the same thing. We're like, the Americans there, the French people there, the diaspora in Africa there, and we're not communicating. Let's talk to each other.
That's a fully loaded response. I don't even know where to start, but what I heard from you is the lack of collaboration.
We need to collaborate.
You touched on a few things. You touched on isolation in North America, isolation in Brazil, in Africa. We even forget to mention the Europeans, because the Black French, the Black Europeans have their own isolation as well because of the language barriers, even on the continent. And, talk about French Afro-speaking French Africa. So how do we come together? I think that's essentially why we started this network, is around bringing voices together to collaborate, right? From a very elementary level to more of these stakeholders and coming together to collaborate in every facet of their achievement or endeavors. So what I also wanted to kind of segue here is I wanted to see if any of the panelists wanted to ask each other questions. I'll give that opportunity, to ask before we go to the chat. Is there anyone that would like to ask questions at this time of each other on the panel?
I have a couple questions for Monday, but I don't think it's for this this forum.
Is there anyone for this forum?
Email, bro? Can I shoot you an email?
We good, my brother. We're good. We'll catch up. We'll catch up.
All right, great stuff.
Eric, over to you. You had a question.
Oh, it's not so much of a question, but because I can hear that we have highlight a few points during the conversation about the streaming, about the size of the market, about collaboration, and one subtext that I wanted to say when I mentioned the size of the Rwandan market is that at the same time, being a small market, and it has been demonstrated in terms of the socioeconomic development of Rwanda, is that it's a wonderful and very fertile ground and conducive environment for experimentation and piloting new ideas, new bold, innovative ideas. When investors come to Rwanda, they have a very strong collaboration, very strong network of support from the different institutions of Rwanda. We have an institution here called RDB that just facilitates. So foreign investors, when they come over here, they find there's a lot of support. Rwanda has been one of the top countries for ease of business. So my suggestion would be when we look into Rwanda, I'm making the case for Rwanda if you don't mind, even if you talk about Africa, but it's a very fertile ground for investment and experimentation because it's a small size. It just cuts all the overheads of the size of investment that you need to do and to be very effective and operational very, very quick. and this is something I can put through the panel and to all the panelists. If you travel to Africa and visit new market, make sure that you put Rwanda on the list. Make sure that you get in touch with me, because we have a small market, and if there's like some facilitation and some ideas of investment, for example, in terms of like a music conference, of creating infrastructure or small label of Rwanda can be a hub. It's always been recognized as a hub for finance. It has been recognized as a hub for Africa in terms of conferences. It has been recognized as a hub in Africa for technology. We have a lot of technological hub. So to look into Rwanda, how you can label Warner's or Empire. If you want to make like collaboration in Africa, you're very welcome to come to Rwanda, and I will be on hand to facilitate all the entries into the adequate and appropriate institution, government organization, and finance. I've got all those links and all those networks to facilitate, in terms of purchasing land to build some sort of a hub for technology, music, and finance. I think this is where the solution is. Music, technology, and finance need to come and start working together. If there's a business model to explore, I would say that financial institution, fintech, is probably our best ally for the future of music. There's the collateral of the IP of those creators can be used to leverage investment and to make sure that there's like some return on investment. So we need, when we talk about like changing the models and be bold, innovative, and try new ideas, and we have to rethink and start from scratch. Rwanda is a very fertile ground, so don't hesitate to holler at me, visit Rwanda, and let us know. We have a small market. It's easier to move in a small market than a big market.
Fantastic. Thank you, Eric.
I'm coming.
See, one commitment. I think you're a great ambassador.
I sold it. I sold it.
Eric is probably working for Rwanda Air, because that's pretty much an advertisement.
No. I'm independent, but what I'm saying to you that we can go and talk to Rwanda Air if we need to.
It's just a joke, my brother.
So I have one question actually from Monday and Samuel, but before that, I want to quickly go to Amy. So Amy, I think I reached out to you earlier. You probably stepped away. What are you hearing from this conversation, and what are the opportunities for collaboration with the UN?
I'm really sorry. I had to take an urgent call, so apologies for that, everyone. But I think I would like to emphasize again Eric's point over there. That combination of tech, investment, and music is probably the powerful elixir that we need to move the industry forward. And all the building blocks are already in place. Now, how do we accelerate and use this moment out of COVID to really try and reshape the creative industries, and in particular the music industry, because the music industry is so huge. It pulls the whole creative industry along with it. The same with other big industries like film. And I think investment is the key. We need to think about impact investments as well, and we need to think about sustainable development while we're doing this too. Huge elements of sustainable development include education. And I think right in the beginning of the conversation, we mentioned that we need to capacitate our local artists. We need to help them actually understand the tech that they're dealing with, build the partnerships that they need to build, have access to the people that can unlock this. And that is a big challenge, especially in Africa. We have a powerful diaspora that stands ready and is interested in doing this. And so how do we bring all these strands together is going to be the key thing. Moments like this, organizations like your own Tope are the key. Now, what do we do when we unlock that door, and how do we manage it and ensure that the benefits are inclusive? And I say this because really, big artists make it big, and there's a lot of value in that. But we also have to talk about the intangible values of the creative and cultural industries, and music in particular. I think, again, Eric, as you were saying, these underground sounds, the importance of having like a movement that lifts up different sounds, that creates the next wave of music or the next trend in music. How do we nurture that and identify it and support it at that grassroots level from where it's coming? All big things. So those are kind of the strands that I'm picking up from it. But the team is here and the minds are here and the talent 100% is here. Now it's a matter of elevation and what's the next step to that elevation moment. I'm not sure I have the answers on this. We're building the platforms. We've had this acceleration. We need to also be talking to governments and policymakers and leveraging moments like the UN International Year for the Creative Economy to influence policy. Because it's all very well to have the investors interested, but if the policy environment doesn't support that, if we're having major copyright blocks, we're about to, for example, in South Africa, pass some new copyright law. What is the impact on that, and how do we manage and navigate that impact? Because there are always unintended consequences. And we, the artists, we, the industry, can actually have a seat, or should have a seat at the table to help discuss these policy changes and influence the direction of them that's pro-industry, pro-artists, and pro-inclusive development. And this is why I don't hear a lot of conversations about sustainable development and all of its facets and coming through. And it's something that I think if we align our conversation around the sustainable development goals, we have 10 years to go. There's a lot of creative elements that are embedded in those creative, in the SDGs. How do we use that to leverage talking points? Because there's power in that, and the governments have to align with them if we're going to have a sustainable future in general. What is the impact of the music industry on sustainability, and how do we use it to alleviate poverty, build industries, build innovation? So those are just some thoughts that I've been having listened to the conversation so far.
Great. Thank you so much. Sam, you had a question?
Yeah, Amy, I think those are great questions, and so I actually wanted to ask you gave the opportunity to ask a question to a panelist. And Tina, I want to ask you something. I want to dovetail on what Amy was saying there. I think that it's incumbent on all of us and any player in the industry in any shape to seek more information, to seek to gather, to move forward. I guess some kind of shared agenda with governments, with policymakers, and so on. It can be incredibly difficult and frustrating, and it can be it can be also not profitable, right, and expensive. So I personally, and we as a company, try and support local collecting societies and industry associations, and as well as engage with the African Union, as well as regional policymakers to try and move the agenda forward. And it's critical because until many of those things are adjusted, it's really a short game, so to speak, right? The sustainable factor really isn't in there. So that's one angle. I had another thought that's kind of escaped me. I've found that my memory capacity is reduced dramatically in the last couple of years. So Tina, I'll just jump to what I wanted to ask you. And if it comes back up, I just want, yes, I know that you were in Lagos, I think a week and a half ago or so, trooping around. I wasn't in town, and I did speak to Eze, and I know you didn't get to meet any of my team, but I wanted to get from you, I think this is your first trip to Nigeria, is that correct?
This was my third trip to Nigeria, but the first time that I came, it was my third, actually. The first two times I came, I was managing Chris Brown, so I didn't get to sit and meet with anyone. I came in, I did a show and left. So this experience was completely different, So
that's great, and that's what I wanted to get from you. What was if it boils down to it, was there any preconceived notion that you had about either Nigerian artists or Nigeria in general that was shattered, or was there anything you learned or found that was really surprising that you just didn't expect? I'd love to hear from your perspective.
I don't know about if it was as surprising. I think the biggest thing for us in being there was the lack of knowledge that was being shared with each artist, and everyone knowing about just ways to make money, ways to record, ways to work together, you know, and just some of the thing, I have to admit, one thing that was surprising is just, and I don't want to put anybody on blast, but some artists don't get along, and they're really huge artists, you know, and it's like you have to come together. How can the rest of these artists learn and grow if you're not working together and coming together to create great things? You know, that was one of the things that surprised me a lot, because there's a lot of camaraderie here. There are a lot of artists here in America that work together, even if they might not get along. They still work together sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. But overall, what it made me think and feel is that I want to come back and do master classes. I want to sit down and find every female, male A&R person that thrives and wants to be an A&R person to sit down and tell them and share what A&R is. I want to come and talk to people about what streaming and the ways that you can make money outside of just streaming records. We plan to do that as Empire. We plan to come to Nigeria first, of course, because we have a lot of artists there, to do master classes, for Ghazi to come and speak to people about building their own empires, because that's what Empire is. We help people build their empires. Yep. And that is what we want to continue to do. So I think master classes are important. Sometimes I know Zoom calls are great, but being able to be there and be in a room with people and share information, and sometimes people retain it a little bit better, you know? Yeah. So we want to give back to Africa, period, not just Nigeria. We want to give back to Africa overall. One thing, if I might kind of turn to my question for Monday, is we have an artist by the name of Yatog in Ghana that is an amazing drill artist. And he was, I think it was BET Most Influential International Artist. My question for you is, does BET and Viacom in Africa influence the decisions made in BET in America and the UK and around the world when it comes to African artists?
Thanks, Tina, for that question. Absolutely, I think you're referring to, we've got a platform called BET Amplified. So we do Amplified twofold. So there's a BET International Amplified, which we go to different parts of the world. We identify young up and coming artists and push them through on a monthly basis in terms of making sure that we take advantage of the network and the global reach and the US reach to highlight a specific artist. It's not always an African artist. So let me be, because we are an international business, so we aggregate from different markets, but we've got the BT Amplified platform, which is carried within kind of our international portfolio with channels across Africa, France, Korea, Brazil, etc. So we do that. In the US, what we then also do is we have an amplified artist a month, which we then obviously collaborate and pick. So these are some, and that's what I was talking about how do we maximize our platform to connect, across, and showcase and highlight and celebrate talent from across the world. Specifically because we know the U.S. market is huge. U.S. is still a benchmark for success, both financially for artists and musicians, and obviously for spin-offs. For spin-offs, you look at merchandising. We having some conversations around merch in terms of just fashion and pop culture. And you look at artists like Ricky Rick in South Africa. He's got his own kind of fashion label as a spin-off and a business on his own, outside just his music, and we're seeing more and more artists taking that kind of venture, trying out those kind of ventures, which is great because it is about diversifying your brand portfolio. And monetizing your brand. So that's something that we definitely want to do. We do the same on the MTV Base side. We have a once to watch, which we do every year. We have many opportunities. We've got a music blog called Spanking New, which is on a weekly basis. We highlight spanking new music from anywhere in the world. If the genre is hip hop from Brazil, hip hop from anywhere in the world, to be honest, we highlight it. Obviously, from an Africa perspective, our business is very much on the ground. We are home. We try our best to continue to identify artists. We actually have a partnership in Ghana, which we did recently around the music awards. We've got Homecoming in Ghana that we try and push and do. Eric, we are on our way to Rwanda as we speak. We're working. I am working with the RDB on a few projects, as you mentioned. So we're really looking to showcase. I mean, if you look at what we did around, bomb genre, the bomb music genre, Amapiano, in Amapiano music genre, these are new genres that are really driving pop culture. They're driving youth culture. And our job is to see how we can amplify further on a global scale, and it's not going to take just MTV, to be honest. It's going to take Trace, it's going to take Hip TV, it's going to take a real collaborative push to really put African music on the map and make sure that as a community, as an industry, we continue to find these opportunities to create sustainable monetization for our industry.
Good segue, Amy. I think
love it.
You have your hand up, but before you go, Amy, I wanted to make sure that the next set of questions that we should focus on, you pointed it out, is how can how can we influence government policy, right? How can corporate space influence what the government is doing around copyright, around even access to data, because obviously that's a big challenge on the continent as well. Like, what are each individual company doing? Sam, you already touched on is that you're involved in that space as well, but how does Empire want to think about that? How is Viacom CBS thinking about that? So go ahead, Amy, before I come back to the panelists.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we have some big players and platforms that are influencing that debate in the shape of the global big four in terms of internet platforms. But I think I just wanted to just make a point and then speak a little bit about a partnership with the UN and UNESCO and the family as well of UN agencies. But what's critical is that artists can influence policy because they have such big voices. And by that, I mean followers, platform stages, influence, and the culture around that. And so I really believe that there's a lot of power in the artistry and the talent that is out there globally to influence this policy. And I think we need influence in a couple of key areas. Firstly, education, and that's to your point, Tina, about needing masterclasses, because the knowledge is out there, but who's localizing the knowledge? Who's bringing it down to the ground? And we can't expect governments to take that on fully. They don't have the capacity. So how do we work to support it as an industry and develop products, educational products that can feed the industry, but at the same time be working to influence the education ecosystem so that the creative industries features more prominently in that, because it is not just a pure art anymore. There's such integration across, and again, to Eric's point, technology, innovation, and without the basic skills of how to market yourself, how to manage yourself, how to create an image, how to actually upload a YouTube video, these basics need to be in place, and then build on that to amplify. The other area really is in infrastructure, and maybe here I'm speaking about a developing world perspective, because without power and electricity, there is no power. Without electricity, there is no power. You cannot get your voice out there. And similarly around connectivity and data, there are huge challenges on the continent, and I think also in Latin America and in Southeast Asia, around the cost of data and actually being able to upload your music or upload your video. These are key areas that will have a if they are changed at a policy level, or if there's sustained policy action to deliver this infrastructure, will change, all industries, but in particular our industry. So I think we need to focus a little bit not only on sustainable monetization, but on sustainable policy influence and how to use our voices and influence to shape where policy goes. Then on another point, I also just wanted to say that the UN is open to all talent, and in particular UNCTAD, which has a creative economy program. We look at trade and development specifically, and essentially the business of the creative industries. UNESCO works on both the tangible and intangible side, the impacts of the industries. And then there are other niche organizations within the UN family, like the International Trade Center and others, that actually have courses on the creative economy, and that are those building blocks. So how do we not duplicate? How do we use what's out there and collaborate? That's the big theme that I'm seeing coming through. And then I also just wanted to, as like a side thing, mention that UNCTAD, our organization, which is the UN Conference on Trade and Development, is having a big conference in Barbados in October. And we have a creative industries forum in the month preceding that. It's a 3-day forum where I would encourage everyone to participate and bring their voices to that multilateral table. But also, perhaps there's an opportunity for us to preach what we're walk the talk, preach what we're praying, and come together and maybe develop a song, a co-produced song between us all for that moment that we can share and showcase how we do that collaboration and how and why it works to the world. So just a thought, a seed planting moment.
I love it. I love it, Amy. Thank you so much for that thought. All right.
That's definitely for Tina and the song part. You're the you're the label on the panel, so we'll be reaching out to you on that particular project. But before we wrap it, I just wanted to quickly go around the table one more time around. So what are how are we looking at impacting or influencing government policy around all the things that Amy mentioned, whether it's the new laws and copyright laws in South Africa. What's Nigeria doing about that? I know there's always all these gray areas when it comes to copyright in Nigeria and some of the bigger markets as well, and also access to data. Is there anything that can be done from the corporate side to influence or to collaborate to build whatever infrastructure that needs to be built? Because I think that could be a tremendous upside in terms of the benefit to the creative industry. So I'll start with you, Monday. What are your thoughts on Viacom CBS and your partnership, collaboration, or influence on the government of where you operate?
No, absolutely. I think it is. Listen, we have to find ourselves in a position where we are able to impact and influence policy. Amy, I completely agree with you. In fact, what I was going to raise at the back of what you're saying, Amy, is around, kind of a more structured approach, developing a more structured approach on how to pitch it to government institutions across the continent. I give an example because I work in the South African space a lot, and on the film side, there's a film incentive. So production companies, filmmakers can tap into an incentive. I'm not sure whether musicians, in fact, let me not say I'm not sure, but definitely there is no incentive for musicians. If you're a young musician and you want to, we need some kind of facility to inspire business and trade. That's the one thing. I think the education and certification is also. I mean, most musicians don't necessarily have a certification. It's talent that you refine over time, and you work with great, powerful producers and great, powerful writers who then package you and market you, and you have relationships. So I think the education part is very important, because it is also about educating, young, up and coming, aspiring music industry practitioners to really engage with the education and understand and elevate this industry. It can't just be about, I'm sure, Tina, the old school A&R is, you pop out to a concert, you listen to a couple of artists, you pick one or two that you think have potential, you bring them through to a studio, you record them. I don't think we build brands that way. I think someone spoke to elevating industry and elevating the standards of how you build music brands, and successful ones that are sustainable for many, 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 many more years to come. I think that's important. But I think, Amy, what we should be really working on, I know in the South African context, and which is probably even Pan-African, on a Pan-African basis, is we need to find a way of influencing policy, so that just like there's film treaties from one country to the next, why can't there be music industry treaties between the US and South Africa, Canada and Rwanda, Uganda, Nigeria, et cetera, et cetera. I think we have to be able to push for some kind of trade incentive, because that's how you're going to create better sustainability, because you will create a pool of professionals. Once again, we've heard many, many horrific stories. I told you guys I'm busy with a biopic on Mendoza, who's passed, but a great Kwaito artist. He came at a time where South Africa was transitioning from obviously the previous apartheid regime into this new democracy. And he's one of those key, influential pop culture figures, but also impacted young people by inspiring them to take to the streets and be active. And active, and that's the role that media and music does play in society. It's it gives our society a voice. Now, but there's a lot of issues with artists who pass on without properly investing their money. We've heard many stories. You guys can all relate stories where you've heard of African artists, not even African artists, global artists. It's a global issue where we're not teaching them how to invest the money. They make the money, they exploit and maximize on their talent, but we're not creating sustainability in how they manage their money. And that's a problem. I think that's part of the ecosystem it's trying to find ways, and it's going to take policy, because policy enables investment, policy creates that sustainability, and I definitely think if we can target some kind of an incentive structure for musicians and the music industry per se, I think it will take us to the next level.
Great. Thank you for that, Monday. What about you, Tina? Last words in terms of how you see the role now that you're navigating the continent in terms of identifying talent and building out the structure for empire on the continent. What do you see as your role in terms of impacting or influencing those policymakers?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned it. I do agree with Monday that it's more than just recording records. It's building now. It's the beginning. Going and recording records and finding talent is the beginning of building brands for that talent. But I do believe that education is important. I think going into different countries and putting money into the country, into artists by building their brands, building the awareness of that music will allow it will actually probably affect some of the decision makers and make them pay attention and say, okay, we need to figure out how we can align with Empire to figure out what's best for our artists or for our people to be able to go to the next level. I mean, I think that our stamp and our footprint in Nigeria has definitely done that. I don't know if it's changing, if it's necessarily changing laws and creating treaties at this point, but it is being recognized. And it's building conversations. It's making people reach out to us to have larger conversations about how we can help the community, how we can help. And I think that's our way. That's our way of doing it. I think also in the education of just overall in the music industry, because it's important to definitely have these things, but it's important for the people to know what they are doing. There's a big difference in signing a deal that is with a major and then coming to an independent hybrid and having the same mentality that you have with the major to, oh, I want to have this big check, not realizing that big check is putting you in a hole. It's putting you in a position where you will not make money. So you will not be able to invest and use your money in other ways. I think there are several things that are happening in America, which actually someone is mentioning now that can be adapted to the continent. That is already proven, that has already shown to have worked, that can actually work there, that can be adapted there in each territory. So I think it's not just one thing. It's so many different things that need to all come together to be able to just make it a better place, make it a more conducive place for musicians, artists, just creatives overall.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, in terms of the SDG elevation, people from poverty, like you mentioned, Amy, I think, not that I think, I know Empire is doing that, because for every contract you sign, you're taking someone and probably their team, not just only the creative or the artist, right? And everybody else that work with them, whether it's their assistant, whether it's their engineer, their producer, you're taking them out of poverty potentially and giving them an opportunity to be successful. So that's very important work that you guys are doing out there. So thank you for that. Sam, over to you. It's pretty quick, 60 seconds. We're running out of time. What is your take, given that you're on the continent and in Nigeria?
No, I mean, I think many of the concepts that we're talking about and affecting decisions are critical. But I think there's also just a bit of a mind shift that needs to happen as well. And actually this was the point I was going to make, Amy, earlier, is that music, specifically the music industry, along with film on the continent, but primarily music, is seen as kind of like just a non-serious business, right? Yeah. And the easiest example to use is sponsor money, right? A sponsor will look at a business event or a sporting event and are ready to open up the treasury to be a part of that and to expose their brand. When it comes to music, they're kind of like, well, don't you guys just hang out in the club? What do you really need money for, right? Whereas the influence of the industry is disproportionately represented. So I think it's not only, well, it is ultimately talking to policymakers and making the point in a concerted way, not duplicating efforts. Amy, that's an excellent point. I will reach out. We have a new e-learning platform, which we'd like to onboard as much material around the industry as possible. But so it's also our own mindset, because we kind of come kind of handed, cap in hand oftentimes, whereas no, we're influencing just as many people and a part of it. So I'll try and keep it short.
Thank you so much, Sam. So that's a very interesting comment that you made, and it was highlighted by the conversations that we've had with like our partners at Frickson Bank, who recently has $500 million in terms of an entertainment fund, and they've been able to figure out how to invest in film. But music, we've had several meetings with them. They're like, they just don't understand. Like, they keep talking about develop a P&L, 5-year P&L. Rarely will you see an artist or label that could develop a 5-year P&L, and they struggle with that because they're coming in from a banker's mindset, and you're telling someone who wants to start a record label to bring you a 5-year projection. I'm like, that's where the conversation usually ends. So that I just wanted to buttress a point on that. So Eric, last word, 60 seconds. Just give us your last words around what you've heard and how you envision the collaboration going forward.
Thank you, Toby. I think that most of the points have been made, but I will emphasize on Tina point and Monday too. When we talk about policy, I just made a comment for the panelists, but I'm just gonna vocalize it now. That we often talk about educating the artists, the creative, the people working in the industry, the operators, through masterclass and education and professionalization. But from experience, I can tell you, I just conducted a project like in 2020. In line of the COVID, there was like a webinar where we were talking about. We did like a high level webinar with the policymakers and people working in a high institution about the music industry and about IP and marketing and all those aspects of the music industry. And what we've noticed collectively, there was like six countries involved. But what we've noticed basically is that when we talk about designing policy, we're talking to people who do not necessarily have a big understanding. You just made the point, like Topi. They do not have an understanding of what we do and the objective, the understanding of the understanding of the value proposition and the return on investment is very limited. So you have you want to develop intangible value of creativity and culture, and you're talking to a bankers who want to calculate the return on investment by next Monday. We don't have those answers. The cultural movement is something that is more organic, and so there's a case to be made also for designing masterclass or like webinars, or I don't know, some sort of a educating format where policymakers and decision makers can be educated by professional from the creative industry with experience. People like Tina Davis, for example, they're more impressed by somebody who's going to come on the table and say, I'm coming from the States, I'm working from Empire, we've been working with such and such artists, I've been managing Chris Brown, and I can do a masterclass for the artist and tell them about my experience. But I also want to do a masterclass with the bankers, with the institution leaders, with the policymakers, to tell you what kind of infrastructure, what type of policy you need to design to facilitate an environment that is conducive for even a knowledgeable artist who knows how to move into his space can evaluate. Because most often than not, the stumbling block of a successful artist or of successful cultural operators comes with taxes, come with when they need to perform outside somebody, all of a sudden there's going to be like some sort of tax on income because you go to perform to the next country. So sometimes the discrepancy between the design of the policies and the artist, and even with the knowledge of the artist, it needs to be aligned with the knowledge of the policymakers. So I would advocate, if we talk about UN and big institution like that, is to also have a design policy for education of the policymakers to be able to talk with real professionals with real experience on the ground and who are credible. They give a lot of value for people who can, when you talk about incentives, for example, success incentivize people. So if you want influence, like influence policies, they need to talk to somebody who has a track record of success behind them. So the profession of the music industry not only talk to the artists, the operators, but also design some program for having to create a space where they can discuss and influence the decision of the decision makers, and maybe design program for them to second professionals and learn from those people. They don't know what's going on at Viacom in those offices at the boardroom. They don't know what's going on at BET. They're looking at it like some kind of glamorous glitz and most of them, I can tell you from my experience, when high-level artists come to Rwanda, even if the officials are coming to negotiate or to make some business or to network, they become groupies. I'm telling you, they will become groupies. They forget about their function, they forget about their influence, they forget about their power, and they just want to have a photo op with those professionals. They don't realize the impact of it. They want to know, what sort of investment, very short vision. So they get impressed by the glamour of the music industry, but they do not understand it. So we need to demystify the music industry, find a way to design program to demystify the music industry so they can see a bit more clearly into the advantages that there is to open policies, to extend the time of return on investment, to not give like, a time limit, and deadline that is unrealistic for the development of a musical, intangible movement. To let the time for, look at what's going on in America. It took like several decades for artists to be able to make $1 million out of one single. That did not happen overnight. So Africa has unrealistic, my country has unrealistic expectation of generating profit by Monday, by jumping on the bandwagon of the music industry without doing the groundwork that needs to be developed.
Thank you so much for those words. I think so. To sum it all up, before I bring Camille on, is what I'm hearing is Tina Davis definitely follow up is those master classes that you mentioned. We can definitely collaborate with you on that. I think that would go a long way in terms of kind of helping to kind of bring some new voices and start to think from a structured environment. I think a lot of what Eric mentioned as well. And also on Monday, I think what we also opportunities are partnering with you and Viacom to further expand what you're doing in your work around collaborating, whether it's with the BT Awards or other things that you do around the continent. I think that's another opportunity that we could definitely work with you on. Same thing, Sam, as well, in terms of what you're working on in Nigeria and West Africa. How we can explore those partnerships. Whether it's people coming into the market or the people from the market going externally, right? So those are some of the things that we can definitely bring us, some form of potential partnership or collaboration. So I wanted to quickly bring in Camille here. 1 minute, Camille, if you could just quickly give us some word before we try to wrap this up. From your vantage point, I want to know what you heard from this conversation. Muted, unmute.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. This has been such a powerful conversation. A big thank you to talk about our able COO. It's always a pleasure to be here. This is Camille. I am privileged to be the CEO of this group. And the one thing that really stands out for me with everything we do at MIPAD is the word collaboration. Collaboration. And just today is a testimony of that. To see Mundane in the room, to see Trace, MTV, Empire, to see all of you in the room with the United Nations and MIPAD in this room today is just a reflection of what we represent in terms of collaboration. And the conversation is so powerful. And Tina, this really goes to the conversation we had when you were in Lagos. We had breakfast together. Thank you so much. It was so good to see you. In Lagos. This is my world. I'm a diplomat, right? This is a world that I work in. And in your world, we need to begin to create synergies. And the one thing I point out to each and every one of you is that everything we're asking that we need, we already have it right here. We have the United Nations here, right? With member states from all over the world. We have you who are, leading voices in the music industry. One of the things we need to do is to show the policymakers the contributions of music, right, to their different countries. In 2019, the UK music industry contributed 5.9 billion pounds. Emphasis on that word, yes? This was 5.8 billion was what the UK music industry contributed to the UK economy. What I would love, Amy, working with you and the executives who are here, is for us to create a research document that shows governments, especially from an Africa regional perspective, what the contribution of your industry is. So to Sam's point, so they don't see you as it's just music, but you are literally contributing to the economies of these countries. So two things I take away is, Amy, I would love to work with you on the soundtrack for the year, right? For the UN Creative Year. You heard it here first. That's something I would love to work with you on and all the executives that are here. But second, and most importantly, which the chief economist at the UN for the Creative Year also talked about, is a research on an Africa regional level that can show and support everything we've discussed about your power and your contributions to economies, so that you can get the support that you need, yeah, to continue to do what you do. So those are two things I'd love to work with everybody on in terms of collaboration after this conversation is, a soundtrack of music that we can create together, right? By people of African descent from all over the world inside Africa, collaborating with their counterparts in the diaspora. And also a research that would support us to have those conversations, Eric, like you mentioned, right? So we can have those conversations and come from a place of credibility. All right. So my final thought would be around what MIPAD represents. So if Studio, you can please put up very quickly the slide on where in the world is Africa. The MIPAD story is about highlighting people of African descent from all over the world, sometimes in unexpected places. Can you go to the next slide, please? So where in the world is Africa? Africa is in Pakistan. Africa is in Brazil. Africa is in Japan. Africa's cultural continuity is all over the world, and we have contributed, right, to the greatness of the world. How do we begin to show that? This is MIPAD's story, highlighting Black excellence worldwide, right? So it's very important that we begin to share with the world our contributions, right? So everywhere in the world that we have contributed, that's what the International Decade is all about. Okay. All right. Thank you, Studio, for that. And finally, this year, we will be recognizing 100 of the most influential creatives all over the world, sometimes in unexpected places and in high places. Studio, if you can just share with me what that looks like. Very good. So this is the selection process is already started for our 100 most influential creatives. And of course, music is one of the categories in there. I would love to have, if you can scroll further down to the 10 categories that we're going to be recognizing, people of African descent from all over the world. Okay, so this document is available for you to actually see, what that actually looks like in terms of our selection process for the 100 most influential creatives. So definitely looking forward to engaging with you all and seeing you during Recognition Week in New York, following the opening of the UN General Assembly. All right, Talkback, thank you so much. I hope those 2 points I made is something we can work with the UN on, and everyone else who's on the panel today. Well done, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Camille. So thank you again, once again, everyone. We'll be reaching out individually in terms of follow-ups to those areas that we spoke about today. And I think Amy also mentioned some of the upcoming events. Barbados is in October. Hopefully we can engage each and every one of you to be part of that event. And also Recognition Week that Camille mentioned. We are in New York every year during the, the UN General Assembly. So we'll be in New York October 1st to the 4th for Recognition, MIPAD Recognition Week. So hopefully you can join us at that event as well. So that's pretty much it. I know we went over 5 minutes. My apologies for that. I try not to go over in this Zoom meetings. I know everybody's busy. So once again, thank you so much for providing this time to speak to us. And I wish everybody a fantastic remainder of the week. Okay, guys?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Mundane. Pleasure to see you, Tina. Good to see you, Amy. Big ups. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you for jumping on. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Visit Rwanda soon.
Yes, Rwanda. Absolutely.